All right, everybody. I am very excited for this one. I've been looking forward to this for a while, and I hope you have too, because we are so honored to have back with us one of the great podcast guests in the history of Rob as a podcast. It's been 10 years ago this fall that we first
Wow.
met Sophie Clarke on Survivor South Pacific, and we've watched her journey over 10 years. Coming back to Survivor Winners at War in season 40, she was looking like the person to beat. And then a
Then I
Tony
was beat.
buzzsaw happened. Yes. But here she is back on the podcast, the great Sophie Clarke. Sophie, how are you?
Woohoo! I'm great. I thought you were going to give the number of years it had been since we first podcasted together, which I don't know what that would have been.
It probably 9 years since we first podcast.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that
I'm trying to remember if I, podcasted with you and talked about Kim and how great she was or not.
Yeah, I think we must have. I'm pretty sure we did right after. And then, I think it's been almost every season since.
And what was your first season of podcasting? Was it Heroes versus Villains?
Heroes versus Villains. Yeah, I got in at the right time. And then, Heroes versus Villains was the first. We didn't start the Know-It-Alls until Philippines.
That's a while ago, yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess it was so do you have your own like drop the 4, keep the 1 version of like what's the
should I bring it back?
Of
so like maybe I should like podcast with Nicole again.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we're bringing it back. That's it. It's just me now, and then we're bringing back Nicole. It's but it's really that's not what drop the 4, keep the 1 means. It would be like if it was like the podcast was like 10 times crazier, where it'd be like
and add 10 zeros.
Yeah, and it's like, Sophie, like here comes another guest and
another
person.
Like if you brought Coach in as like a third thing suddenly,
or like bring in like a second person to interview you. Yeah, the like rapid fire questions, and then you're interviewing us at one point. So it would really be just like completely like bending the format on its head. But Sophie, we'll talk about Survivor 41, but it's since we last spoke, you've become a new mom. So congratulations to you and Bobby on baby Robinson.
Thank you. I was gonna actually bring him down to show you
Sophie, we don't you could just tell us about the baby.
I know that he's not an object, but he just went down for a nap. Baby Robinson is doing well. He was 5 months yesterday. He's becoming like mildly more interesting. I'm realizing now suddenly like I probably should say nice things about him because this will, last to eternity and he could listen to it. But he's
I haven't started that yet.
I gotta say, like, I think when I feel like on Survivor particularly, the mom is like such an archetype and such a personality. And like obviously outside of Survivor too, right? Like you have all these like best mom mugs and like being a mom is like a thing. And I always thought like, I will have children. I will never be a mom. Like that's not going to be for me. And I have been embarrassed, but also like very happily proven wrong on that. Like I'm finding myself embracing being everything that MOM means. I feel like I'm ready for like my what is it like the Parvati 4.0 stint on Survivor, where now you play like a mom.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, so
that's
just so much to look forward to, and then you'll get to the final tribal council.
Take my teeth out.
Completely take your teeth out. Completely turn the whole genre on its head.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's really great to hear. It's so great to hear that he's doing well. He's a good baby.
He was a very terrible baby for a very long time. He ate way too much and didn't sleep. And now he's turning a corner. We've done that whole thing where like we sleep trained him. He's cried. It turns out like the best part of a baby is when they're sleeping and they're away. And he's getting better at doing that. So it's getting better. I mean, this is the other thing. I feel like on Survivor, everybody's always talking, like the moms are always talking about how, being a mom is so difficult. And like, that makes Survivor easier because they've like gone through being a mom. And another thing that I feel like I have a lot of apologies to moms to make for doubting them in my head.
Well, in the last season that you played in, I mean, you were one of the, few players that was not like a new parent in that season. Do you feel like that you could like ever leave your baby and go do Survivor at such a young age, like so many people did in Winners at War?
I think it is. Everybody has their own, thing they should do.
Because I definitely could. It would be. I could. Would not be an issue for me.
I went on a work trip for the first time last week for like 3 days. And I had a lot of people say to me like, oh my God, are you going to be okay? Are you going to miss Robinson? And I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be so terrible. It was amazing. Like I slept in for the first time in my life, like not my life, but for the last 5 months, it was very nice. But it was only a couple days. I feel like I could probably like do a pre-merge Survivor and like go home. I'm not sure if I could do
26 days. That's can't hurt.
Well, I was going to say maybe in about 5 years, Survivor will really only be 3 days. So I could probably fit it in.
A long weekend. Yeah. Well, Sophie, I would love to get your take on Survivor 41 from what you've seen, because I know that you're such a student of the game, and also you played in the most recent season. So basically, they finished filming with you, and I know you were very sick at the final tribal council, but basically they shut down, and then here they come back 2 years later, and we have Survivor 41. And what are your thoughts on what you've seen?
So first of all, I will say I am like such a casual viewer these days that whenever I have to come on this podcast, I have to like take a little more seriously. So I did try to take the episode a little more seriously and bring out a notebook. I also texted a bunch of my friends who love Survivor just out of curiosity, because I realized with COVID, like I don't know, just to see what people are liking. All of my friends are adoring this season, which is interesting because I also have like a New York City Survivor text chain that is a little more negative on the season. And I feel like that is a classic thing where like, if you've played Survivor before, you look at this season and you think like, this is not Survivor. Like this is broken in so many ways. It's like, it's shorter, too many advantages. Like it's not pure. But I think like as a viewer, if you've never been on Survivor before, it's just more fun. Like I think Mike White did his duty. He made the season more fun. Like, we should all be thanking Mike White. And I'm not sure, I haven't listened to any of the podcast. I'm not sure what the discourse is on this season. I'm not sure what those who know it all know about this season. I had a friend actually who I thought had the best analogy ever, which do you play Settlers of Catan?
No, I know of it, but I haven't played it.
Okay. So Settlers of Catan is, some people think like the greatest strategy game of all time. It's a good like gateway game, but either way, it's very pure. It's very simple. Like it's a great game because it's very simple. There's very few rules. There's good strategy. Settlers of Catan then put out expansion packs, and there is an expansion pack called Cities and Nights. And Cities and Nights is like kind of a shit show. Like it's just so random. Like you could be playing so well and never win Cities and Nights. But at the same time, Cities and Nights is so much more fun to play because you like almost laugh with some of the twists that happen in the game. Like you'll pick up a card and you get to like change the board. And the first time I played Cities and Nights, my mind was blown. I was like, what do you mean I just get to change the board? Like that is so, on Catan, the board is what the board is. And I feel like this is what's happening on Survivor this season. Like we're all used to Settlers Catan, and they've rolled out like the expansion pack that turns the whole thing on its head. And I think we all just need to admit it's more fun. Yes, as a player, it would suck. Like you could be a really good player and go down. There's all these twists and advantages. But like for those small moments on TV where you get to see something crazy happen, like I think it's fun.
Okay. I mean, I feel like that your breakdown I think is pretty much on point with like what the super fans are saying versus the casual fans. Although that I feel like that both groups I've heard feel like that the season is too complicated. They're not following what's going on. Was that what in your focus group they reported back?
We didn't get into that in the focus group, but I do agree with that. I feel like, so there's been this trend of advantages for a long time. And I think we can all be grumpy and say we wish it was season 1 again. Or we can say, you know what, this is going to be the trend. And how do we make a world where Survivor is more luck-based, less pure, less social-based, more fun to watch? And I do think that this season has been a good evolution. Like it seems like they're trying to like do things that are a little bit like smarter about the way they introduce advantages. Yeah. I do think that like it's hard to track episode to episode. I've liked the things that are like purely in a single episode, or like you see the story from front to back. But like having to remember 3 episodes later who has like the extra vote is impossible.
Yeah. But Sophie, can I just ask a question? Like, when was Survivor not fun? What was the part of that was like? Because I feel like that the moral of the Mike White story was that Jeff had built like this whole like system of currency out of fire tokens that the whole show was going to be based around, and that was what Mike said. Is that fun? But
this is my point.
Like,
is I think that like
South Pacific not fun.
What's the Keith Nail quote?
Going on a cruise is fun.
I mean, I just think that the Survivor producer, this is the like way Survivor is going, and we can all get on board and help shape it, or we can wish that it wasn't happening. So no, I think Survivor has always been fun, but I think that what has been happening, right, with the fire tokens is Survivor was going in a direction that was like going to be overly complex, like super, like a board game played out in real life, which was not going to be fun to the viewers. Yeah. And so I appreciate that they've taken the advantages and rather instead of turning in the direction of like a very complicated monetary system between 2 islands that are like one's in and one's out, towards like, let's have people say funny phrases to try to win a thing. Mm-hmm. Like that I loved that. Like the 3 phrases I thought was the most successful.
Could you have done that? You feel like that you would have had any issue with blurting out about the broccolis looking like little trees?
I would have had major issues because I have a lot of word finding difficulties. But
you're so good at the analogies. I feel like if it was a tribal council, you could do it like nothing.
There was like 6 months ago or something, I told my husband to go get the venture capital machine, which by that I meant the vacuum cleaner. And they both started with VC. So like, I don't think I would have been good at the broccoli stuff.
I mean, venture capital machine is sucks up everything in its way.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Am I disappointing? Like, should I be here like pounding the table for, keeping with the classic?
No, I'm curious just to know, what you think about all of these things. It's, that you and I haven't had the chance to catch up since we talked after Winners of War. So I just wanted to check in and know where you're at. So don't worry about like having to like put on any sort of a front of like what you're supposed to be on the podcast.
I mean, the other thing is like, when Jeff first started coming out with these promos that were, the monster is going to come and get you. I didn't get it. I was so confused. I thought they are really trying to like fit a square peg into a round hole on this one. And as the season's gone by, like I actually really get their monster analogy. Like things are going to happen to you in the game. Like the game is a player unto itself. And I think that this season is going to be a painful transition to this new world of, the game kind of trying to outrun you. But I think we will all adjust to it. It reminds me a little bit, okay, bad analogy again, but like it's a little bit like Squid Game. Like, the the challenge in Squid Game where they all have to go over the bridge. Yes. And it's absurd. Like if you choose the first spot, you're dying. Like there's absolutely no hope for you. But the challenge is like kind of fun to watch. It's kind of crazy. Like the people are like killing them, the person in front of them to, break one of those square things or whatever. And I feel like that's a little bit what this has devolved to, which is, yes, it's not pure anymore. Yes, like there's a ton of luck involved. But it's kind of funny in this like voyeuristic way that people just get screwed over. Like, well, Sophie, I think as viewers, we like to watch that.
This is very dark. Are we like the American gambling tourists in Squid Game watching this carnage?
I think we are. I think viewers, if you were not a survivor, I think if you were a survivor, you felt so bad for Danny and Deshaun and that group who had their immunity stripped from them. I think if you have not been on Survivor and doesn't know what that feels like, I think most people were like those Americans in Squid Game and they were like, ha 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 ha. Like
they thought they were safe. No, they're not.
Exactly. So that's my take. I wouldn't want to play the season, but
yeah. Very, very interesting. And Sophie, that I think a lot of people think of you as a purist based on the game that you played in South Pacific. That would you want to be playing in a game that was like this, like frenetic and chaotic?
I mean, I think in some ways, I don't know if other winners would agree with this, but right for me, there was a lot of stress going back onto that second season, thinking like, oh my God, you're going to tarnish your beautiful reputation that you've built up. And I think there's some fun in this season of just, it seems like as a player, being able to like take the stress off yourself, that like some of it is out of your hands. Seems like it could be a little freeing actually as a player, and just, rolling with the punches a little bit.
Do you think that just as a player, like the baseline strategy needs to be just like just playing like aggressive, like from the start, where I feel like that for, many years, talking about the 39-day game of Survivor, we've talked about sort of like, like, oh, they say it's about big moves, but really it's about like making the relationships, is the correct strategy at this point in time, like to actually go all in on the big moves?
So I was thinking about this last night, actually, with my husband, which is, I feel like I think that we're going to reach a point where we almost like go back in time, or like the tides turn on this. Because right, we had this period of Survivor where there was no advantages, and what was valued was like basically your social game and the relationships you formed and are you likable at the end. And then we entered the world of like, Russell Hantz and Tony and finding idols as being like a way, something to put on your resume, and all of these like trickster things as a way to stand out at the final tribal council and say, look what I did. This is like a way that I, differentiated myself throughout the season. I think now, because this season has had so many advantages, there's so many twists that people have had to respond to, there's so many idols, I almost think that it doesn't even matter anymore, because by the time you get to the end, everybody's going to have a quote unquote resume. Everybody will have had some kind of idol that they had to deal with, whether or not they played it or reacted to it, some kind of extra vote that, like, I don't know how you could possibly start to grade people against these things. What do? You say, oh, you played 2 idols and they played 1 idol, or like you had an extra vote once. And I almost feel like there's like a minimum baseline that you have to hit, which is like involve yourself in some way with all these advantages, prove that you can get through it. But because they're so ubiquitous, now it's going to actually be more about reverting to who's good at the social game. And like winning the game is not going to be hinging. I mean, I think about Xander. Like Xander, obviously, he has this idol. He has this extra vote. Does he have both? I can't even keep track. He seems to have a lot.
He has an idol and an extra vote.
I think traditionally, 4 years ago, you would have looked at somebody like Xander in that position and thought like, whoa, big threat. Like, look at all the things that he's found and he's going to win these challenges. And I'm looking at Xander now thinking like, you're one of many people who's like found random trinkets on the island. And what it's going to come down to at the end is that 2 people like you. And I'm not sure people do like Xander. So I almost feel like Survivor has like worked against itself in this way, where by the end, like none of it will matter because it's just too much. We're going to go back to like, who's a nice person?
Oh, interesting. Because I feel like that what you said about like there is a baseline of, okay, like, can you prove that you are, worthy of playing the fast paced game? And I kind of feel like that Heather failed the test from that when she got up and tried to initiate that live tribal council. I almost feel like that. Was that in some way like disqualifying for Heather, where even if she gets to the final 3, that people will look back to that moment and it's like, what are you even doing?
Yeah. I think Heather's one of the few people on this season who've shown that she can't keep up in that sense. I mean, it's rare, I feel like, where somebody disqualifies themselves for a game move on Survivor. Like usually you've disqualified yourself for like slowly being an asshole and annoying people over the course of 39 days. Yeah. But for somebody to like even somebody who like misplays an idol, I'm not even sure, for instance, Liana and the way that she tried to do the idol, what do you call that? Nullifier?
The knowledge is power.
The knowledge is power. I don't even think that was that disqualifying. Granted, like she didn't get it. It's too bad. But like, I don't think it was a veto, a big X on her thing. I totally agree. Like the Heather moment, I was like cringing, thinking like, you should just leave now. Like this is it for you. But I do think there is just this, everybody on this season has obviously can navigate twists. They've all had to withstand something difficult. They've all gone on whatever trek adventure thing up the mountain. And I feel like it's just going to come down now to social game, because it's going to be so embarrassing. They're going to sit at the end and say, what, like, how many advantages did you find? It's like, not Survivor.
Sophie, you played in season 40, and I thought that you really were great at being able to navigate the live tribal councils. I mean, specifically the tribal council where Tyson went home. There's been a lot of the live tribal councils. Could you just talk us through a little bit of, as a player, what is it like when the tribal council, everybody gets up from their seat and is moving around?
It is terrifying because it feels like it's unraveled all of the work that you've done for the last 3 days. Like you spend so much time on Survivor trying to categorize like who has talked to who, where have they talked, you know, how much time did this person spend with this person in the game of like musical chairs before we decide who to vote out, like where have we landed? And I feel like when those whispers happen, everybody is individually trying to like maintain whatever lie that they're keeping up with, like the web of alliances. And you like, it requires a lot of trust, in what you've planned. That said, I don't know, Raw, I would love to know how often do live tribal councils actually change the outcome, right? Like the Tyson one was a different situation where like somebody did something that changed the situation. Like Jeremy walked out and we all had to decide a new thing to do. But at Winners of War, I'm trying to think like many of those like whispery things were more show. We're more like, let me just really dig in and make this person really think I'm with them because of the fear of idols and everything.
And how much do you have to choreograph what you are going, like if there's going to be like, okay, this is for show, do you have to let everybody in on the plan? Because Heather, it's what it seems like was from my exit interview with Nasir today, Nasir said basically they were going to split the votes between Tiffany and Xander, and they were going to flush Xander's idol. And Heather went rogue, stood up and tried to get stuff going. And ultimately then just Tiffany went home and they didn't flush Xander's idol.
Yeah. And I mean, and this is, I think that's right. Like if unless people know what you're going to do, and this is where I think like Evie probably, not that you went wrong, but I think part of the problem on Survivor is that you are incentivized to make other people believe that you believe you're with them. And so even if you're nervous, showing that nervousness is usually against your best interest. And so like Evie is sitting there, and even if she's only 75% sure that she's not going home, she can't take that time to verify that 25%, or else the percentage chance that she's going home gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's the risk with these whispered things is like the moment you start engaging in them, you break the like veil of trust that you have with all these other people. Cause they're like, why do you need to be whispering with this person? Like, I thought we were together. So it just requires like more bullshitting, I feel like, before you get there. It's so stressful.
It's very stressful for us too. We had the two tribal councils last night. I thought that both of them had a lot of intrigue in terms of what ultimately ended up happening. In the first tribal council, in the Nasir tribal council, Stephen and I really were not on the same page about whether or not it was the right call to vote out Nasir versus Heather from Shan's perspective. Do you have any thoughts on Shan's decision there and playing the extra vote to make sure that Nasir went home and couldn't use his idol?
I will say I was a little confused about all the extra voting, the splitting. I assume they did that as some kind of like self-preservation thing, just in case somebody voted something else.
Yeah, I didn't think that the show explained that well last night in terms of like what, like I just kept like, well, what are they doing with the extra vote? And then when we saw it play out, it was a 3-3, and that they were gonna like, oh, okay, that she put one vote on this year and one vote on Heather. I guess it made sense, but it seemed like a very conservative play there to make sure that, you know, no matter what, you could get Nasir out.
I mean, Shan is a fascinating character. Like she is, I don't think she's like a weird combination, I feel like, of like Kim and I don't know, Rob. Like she's very, I'm finding her like very, very fun to watch. I mean, I think for Shan, this is all like obviously backseat driving, but it seems like I think she's already at risk of being seen as just like obsessively controlling. And so I think she really needed, probably with her relationship with Ricard, to like let him have one. And granted, like this was one of my big things on Survivor 40. So I'm not sure it's actually a good strategy given that I lost, but I felt like on 40, there was a certain there's a certain degree of like as long as the person you really don't want to go home doesn't go home, like you can't be in charge of every single vote. Like you're not going to end up winning. Like people, you're going to get what Shan is experiencing now, which is like being seen as being in charge. And I remember in season 40, I feel like I would often feel like, when Adam went home, I didn't really want Adam to go home. I would have chosen other people, but at certain points, like it's not worth it to stick your neck out for something that's going to be marginal. And as long as, like in that vote, for my case with Adam, like for me at that point, it was like, as long as it wasn't, I don't know, Sarah, then like, fine, I'll sacrifice Adam. Like there's a certain degree of compromise. And I feel like Shan is not the queen of compromise. And so it probably, and maybe she should just embrace that because I think she's already been seen that way. But I think for her relationship with Ricard, it seems like a kind of a necessary thing to like let him have one win in this sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you feel like that because Shan and Ricard have been together for so long in this game, and then here they are back together on a small tribe like they were earlier in the game? Do you feel like that, basically she used up so much of her political capital in the pre-merge with the, just let me have my way, just let me have this. And now this was like I think it was a crucial vote. And then she ends up, like Ricard has to say here, like, come on, you said you were going to let me have something. And then we ultimately get rid of Nasir, who it seemed like had a very good relationship with Shan, and we keep in Erica and Heather, who don't have such a hot relationship. Yeah,
I
she's
agree.
Trying to get them out.
I mean, I think it's a good reminder that like the age-old strategy of laying low is like an age-old strategy for a reason, which is, I think the worst thing to do is to come into the merge with any kind of like strong brand that the other people see you as. Like you want to be like as middling as possible, whether that strong brand be, Shan, you're going to control every vote, or Xander, you're a very athletic person. Like there's something to be said for not emerging too soon. And I'm curious to see, I mean, I just can't believe that Shan is going to be able to keep this up until the very end. I think very few people, I mean, even Tony, right? You look at season 40, even Tony could not be Tony the entire game. Even Tony had to put on the brakes for the first 15 days of the season. And I feel like Shan has like shown too bright too early.
Sophie, I got a great question for you from Mike Edwards, who says, do Shan and Ricard give you any vibes of you and Albert? Does one of them hold all of the power like you did? Or do you feel like that they are even in their power dynamics where, you and Albert did not see eye to eye on all occasions? But I don't remember there being blow-ups like we've seen with Shan and Ricard.
Oh no, there were certainly blow-ups. There was a very strong blow-up on our first season that made air where I was blurred because I was swearing at him so much. That's
Do you remember what that was about?
What's that?
Would you remember what the argument was about?
Oh, he was trying to vote me out.
Okay, well, that'll do it. Yeah,
I was telling him he was stupid. Yeah. I mean, I actually think that with Albert and I wouldn't say that I held the power so much as like I leveraged the like context of our tribe to like handcuff him and not allow him to do anything. So I was very much like, we've all made this decision. Nobody's going to turn their backs. The minute you turn your back, we're all going to turn our back on you, because he wanted the two of us to splinter off. And so I was able to like rein him in, not because like I am a powerful person, although I am, but more because like I used that as a handcuff. I feel like Shan and Ricard have something a little similar going on, where I think a little bit of it is Shan just like telling Ricard what to do, which I actually think has not been that successful. But I think it's more just like they are tied in a way that they cannot extricate themselves from, because they have been these two people on this tribe together. And like the fact that they've gone through all of this crap, I feel like is what they both know they have to vote with each other. Like they are like, they've gone through so much at this point. Like this is their way to get to the end, is like to continue voting with each other despite hating each other. So I feel like there are some similarities, which is like two people not getting along, but like kind of being forced to continue to vote with each other against both of their better interests. I'm really liking Ricard. I have to say, like, yes. But this episode was a turning point for me with Ricard. I don't know I'm curious to see how you've been feeling about him, but I was thinking potentially that he was a bit like, I don't know, narrow-minded in his thinking about the game. Like when I saw he and Shan fighting, I was thinking a lot, it was kind of like his way or the highway, in the same way that Shan was like her way or the highway. And I feel like I'm starting to see that like Ricard is actually in like a very good position, that he has kind of Shan on one side, but he's also like making these ties so the people on the out. He's emerging for me as somebody who like could actually win. I don't know how you're feeling.
Yeah. I've been, very bullish on Ricard's position in the game. That I think that Ricard, like, I'm not sure if necessarily like this is his game plan, but I think that he's so great in like the little finger role where, he's not the person who's out in front. I don't think he would do great in that role. Like if he was like a John Carroll, where he was looked at as sort of like the leader of a group, but if in this position that he's in now, where everybody's looking at Shan and everybody might be looking at Deshawn and Nasir, and sort of like they're like, and people are distracted by Evie, and he's able to, he's working with Shan, he's talking to Xander and talking to Erica and to Heather, where he's able to like, he could work with anybody and jump to any alliances. I love watching that style of play. And I think that he was able to make a move that I think was really, really good for him, but not so great for Shan. And he was able to pull that off.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think given that Shan is so in the mix of everything, I always think the best place to be on Survivor is being the person who like really can understand what, like, I'm not saying this well, but like he has been with Shan for so long that I think he's going to be able to tell immediately when Shan is lying to him, what is Shan doing? And so I feel like better than being Shan, who's the person with a lot of connections, is being the person who can like read Shan and like watch Shan work with all of her people and be able to say, oh, like this is how the tribe is coming together. And then obviously it was like the whole thing with the hearing was so cool because it is a great, I'm not sure how nice, like obviously he's hard of hearing, but I don't know how much his hard of hearing truly makes him like be able to read people, but it is obviously what he's very good at.
Yeah. I mean, that was something that, that he talked about in the preseason about like one of the reasons why he thought he would be able to do well in the game. And I feel like that now, like we're just starting to see where Ricard has had a couple of quiet weeks where, that it's been more focused on other things that are going on. But now like Ricard tells us last night that he feels like that he's in a really good position. He really likes how he's playing. And I feel like that he's somebody who's really on the rise now as we're into the final 8 that people are not thinking about and not talking about. So I think that now, and when we look ahead to next week, where we see him talking to Shan about like, I think it's got to be Deshawn, if he could break that alliance that Shan has, like the fracture that's there. And if he can like really, rip that open, I feel like that Ricard is in a really good position.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I have PTSD about season 40, but I feel like the worst place to be in at this point of the game is feeling like you're in control, which I think like Shan feels and probably, Deshawn and Danny feel. And I feel like people like Erica, Ricard, people who kind of know I don't really have that much power here. Like these are the people who have power. It feels like those are the people who are going to be in the best position to like to do well in this game. Because the people who are in control are obviously, I mean, this is total PTSD, but they're not going to see it coming. They're all going to figure it out.
Yeah. And the people that are on the bottom, like, hey, you want to take a shot? Like, oh, I would love to do that. Yeah. I've been waiting to do that. So
how crazy was that in this episode? The moment where they were like, let's just the 4 of us go over here. I mean, I recognize I did that in the tribal council, but like that was with a majority group of people. Now when there's like 10 people on the beach, it's crazy. Yeah. I will say I have enjoyed them this season. I feel like these people are all gamers. But I like that they also are very authentic to their personalities in the way that they are gamers. Like, I like that there are mistakes that are being made because they can't help themselves because this is the kind of person they are. Like, one of the things I've said for a while is I feel like with the casting these days and casting so many fans, I feel like you lose some of that fun of watching a diversity of people interact. And like the classic example being, season 1, Sean voting alphabetically, and the idea that somebody would like choose to do that. And these days it's like, well, let's all choose to be like the absolute perfect Survivor player in a box. And I feel like this season there's these people who like just can't help themselves, like Nasir, the way he was telling Heather he had to vote her out. Heather, like kind of being a chicken with her head cut off. Shannon Ricard, like getting in fights constantly against their own best interests. Like all of these people, I feel like they're trying to play their best, but their like true personalities are almost getting in their way, which I find to be very fun to watch.
I'd love to talk about that other tribal council that we had from this episode where we saw Evie ultimately go home. Did you think it was going to be Evie in that tribal council?
Didn't you? I feel like it had to be.
I thought it was going to be Liana. I bit hard on the there was so much Liana content in the episode that I felt like, okay, this is definitely going to be Liana. But outside
of editing, did you feel like did you really think that like Liana, Deshawn, and Danny were going to break up?
I felt like that Deshawn went very far down the road with Evie and Xander to not be at least considering it. And I just felt like that. And the edit really did fool me. I felt like that there was so much of Liana in the episode of Liana talking about Xander and how she just wanted to get rid of him. I'm not sure what her EDGIC rating was on this episode, but I feel like it was probably not a positive one.
Because they hate your face usually doesn't go over well with the EDGIC crowd.
Right. So I thought it was going to be it was going to be Liana, and I felt like that Evie was rising.
Yeah. I think Deshawn is also playing a really good game.
I do too.
Like the people who can be in the majority alliance and yet continue to entertain minority people in a way that doesn't piss them off. Like, I think that is always a great place to be in. And that's obviously what Albert was trying to do in season 23 unsuccessfully. But I think Deshawn is playing a great game. I just think that like those tribal lines, particularly not tribal lines, but those alliance lines that have been made now post-merge, particularly in this season, given how accelerated it is. I thought the only chance for Evie to stay was after them seeing that Nasir had been sent home. Like I thought, or no, so sorry, the opposite. Like I thought the Nasir being sent home was like the nail in the coffin or whatever. Like they weren't going to risk losing another member of that side of the tribe, given Nasir was there. With Evie, I was very sad that Xander didn't play an idol on Evie or the extra vote, which the extra vote would have been really interesting in that situation.
Yeah, we talked about it last night on the Know-It-Alls that Christian Hubicki had wrote in to ask about that. Yeah, it would have made it a 3-3 tie, and then because then it would have been Liana can't vote, Xander is immune, Evie can't vote, that Danny and Deshawn would have had to draw rocks potentially in that scenario.
Two things from this tribal council that I noticed. One is, and it reminded, God, a lot of PTSDs from season 40, it turns out. But one of my biggest takeaways from my season was I wish that I had made rules for myself before going in. Because I think when you're on Survivor, you end up trusting your gut and you're playing with your heart and you're forgetting things that you just know to be true about Survivor, that are just facts. When you're in the moment, you have a hard time seeing them. Things like, don't trust Tony. Tony's a snake. He's going to F you over. If I had just had a rule that like, you're never allowed to trust Tony, things could have gone better for me. And I feel like for Evie and Xander, if they had had a rule going in of like, you're on a swap tribe, which is basically what that was, and you are down numbers, like play your idol if you have one. Like, because what's going to happen is they are going to convince you you're safe. Like, that to be true. They are going to convince you. And so do you really want to trust your gut in that situation? Or should you just have a rule that in that situation, you play your idol? And I feel like there are all these times where survivors like probably trust their guts in ways that they should just like override it. And they should tell themselves, if I'm ever in this situation, I'm just playing my idol. Because think about how many people go home with idols in their pockets unnecessarily. And you're always going to, because you're never going to be told like this person's voting for you. There's never going to be this perfect player idol scenario, especially now, given the idols have been around for so long, right? In the beginning, it was like, no, but there wasn't many idols. Like people would tell you on season 23 of South Pacific, we would tell people they were going home. Like we told people pre-merge, we would tell everybody like, Christine, we're voting you out. Michaela, like everybody knew they were going, like we would give them the heads up because there weren't that many idols around and we didn't have to worry about that.
Now they have a shot in the dark too.
Yeah, this is my crusade, which is that Evie and Xander, like the idols should have been played. Like they shouldn't have even had to go through the day and then say, should we play it or not? They should have just immediately when they said it was going to be the five of them, great, we're going to play the idol. Like I think more people need to do that.
Now, that's really interesting. And so is that coming from a place where, you know, in season 40, you went home with an idol, and you feel like that, you know, that is like you should never go home with an idol, play that it's a, you know, play the idol on the wrong tribal council. Who cares? So what? Don't go home with an idol.
So this sounds really, this sounds really lame, but because you think like, oh, Survivor's a dynamic. I mean, actually, there's this book called Checklists or something like that, which is a book written by Atul Gawande, and it was he's a big, medical writer, and it was one of the books that made him famous. And he wrote this book basically saying that one of the best ways to reduce like OR complications and general complications in the hospital was just to make a checklist, and just make a checklist that said, did you, close the wound? Did you count the number of, whatever that are in the OR? And it was really obvious things, like things that obviously people should be doing. But just by making a checklist and having people go through it, like the outcomes, like the preventable issues, like really improved. And the whole point of this book was like simple checklists, just have simple checklists. And I feel like on Survivor, you need to have a simple checklist. And I wish I'd gone into season 40 of Winners with a very simple checklist that had things like, before every vote, ask yourself, does this vote hinge on Tony? If it does, reconsider the vote. Like what is that? If you're on a swap tribe and you have an idol in your pocket, play the idol in the first go. And like, obviously, like in my case on my swap, that would not have been the right move. But I think more times than not, it would be the right move. And you should go in, and even if it's not the rule, even if it's just like before going to tribal council, think about every player in the game and think about what the right move is. Because like when you're out there, that's not necessarily what's going through your head. Like you're just thinking a little bit more dynamically around like, do I trust this person? Do I not trust this person? And you're not doing the really good thinking that like you are doing sitting behind the microphone every week. And I think if you took that time and had like a checklist of questions for yourself.
You're saying do a podcast every round of play.
Yes. You should be doing a podcast in your head about the last 3 days and what you would be saying if you were not on the beach. And then I think potentially Evie could have played their idol.
Yeah. I do think you're being too hard on yourself on that you should know, like if there's a play your idol, if there's every vote that, that is hinging on Tony, or at least, think it over, that's, I think that's just like sort of like, I don't know what the right metaphor is, but too much in the rearview mirror.
Yeah. But I do think, my other complaint about this tribal is I'm a little down on Xander these days. I mean, I'm not so far as to say that I hate his face.
Yeah, his face is a very nice face. I've seen so many worse faces than Xander.
Yeah. God, maybe I'm not going to get into that, but I do think that he is.
Have you seen my face? Please, the trade with Xander any day.
I think he's playing like a little too individually too soon.
Yeah.
Like I just think that it's very. How many times has somebody really gone on like an individual spree towards the end of the game and won? I can think of Ben Driebergen. Like a spree meaning like a combo of things, and I think that. Especially given my point that I think that the value of playing an idol is going to be diminished at this season's final tribal council because everybody will have done that. I think that Xander needs to like make more friends. Like I just don't get a sense that people like him out there. And I think that he has too quickly ditched his tribe people. Like he could have really put himself out there for Evie multiple times now and didn't. And I feel like it's a bit early to be taking this route.
Well, also that of the people that are on the jury, Tiffany didn't go out with the greatest opinion of Xander. Evie's now on the jury, and I don't know how they're feeling about Xander at this point, but Tiffany still seemed a little hot even in the exit interview. Yeah. So I kind of feel like that sort of is contagious, especially when the mayor of Ponderosa is not feeling so great about a person. So, I think that it is going to be a tough road for Xander, like even if he could get to the end.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things I like to see at the Final Tribal Council is somebody who's who's like been a leader in some ways, been able to convince people to work with them. Like that's the sign to me of a great player. Somebody who has, or like when you see Jeremy protecting Steven at Game Changers, like what a, I think that elevates him a lot in the jury's eyes. You see Parvati playing all of her idols for her crew. Like I think there's something noble about looking after your friends and not taking an individual route. And I think there's many ways to get to the end, but it feels like Xander is choosing to look out for himself above all others unnecessarily early, in a way that can't be making friends.
Right. Evie, in the exit interview this morning, talked about how Xander feels really good with Danny, that they had gone to Shipwheel Island in the first episode of the season, that Xander also was telling Danny that he knew about Liana's advantage. Although Xander did seem like he was surprised that Deshawn didn't end up voting with him. So I was just trying to think of, could Xander feel like that he's okay with Danny and Deshawn moving forward? But, Xander did feel like he seemed betrayed that they didn't end up voting with him to take out Evie.
I mean, I think Xander's young. I think that's the other thing.
He's 20.
And I imagine having someone like Danny, this like, big football player, straight. I'm sure he was awed by that and wooed over. It's funny. It's just funny, Xander, to me, because he's in this archetype that we've seen before. Like in many ways, he is the Aussie, he is the Joe, he is the Jay. But I actually think that he has I think he has just more flaws than they do. And it's funny because I think he's being seen as them, but I actually think he's like a quite different player. Like he's obviously, pretty smart. I just think it's funny. I think what perception and reality are with him are probably a little different.
Mm-hmm. So you feel like that the right move for Xander would have been play the idol on Evie, send out Liana because you take out one of the numbers from the group that really has the power. Yeah.
Or at least the extra vote, right?
The thing is, I think that, it's hard to say. Like I asked Evie this morning that did they think that it was going to be that Deshawn
they
was
might not
with
have
them.
known.
I think that they really, I think Deshawn really sold them a bill of goods that he was going to vote with them. So it might have been a different story if Deshawn was like less convincing, but I think that he was so good making them think that he was going to vote with them that they thought that it was going to be, they didn't need to play the advantages.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that, the argument with Xander is kind of like, I'm a little screwed. A lot of people are out to get with me. Like, what good does it do to keep Evie in the game versus not? Like, I'm kind of on an island already, although an island by his own choosing, in my opinion. And I think 10 years ago, that would have made a lot of sense in Survivor of like, you're never going to have the numbers anyways. Like maybe, you just got to play a me game. But I feel like this season with all of these twists, like who could have predicted that they were going to be broken up into two different groups of 5 and go to tribal? It's shown, I think, this season of Survivor that like any friends are good friends. Like you just need to have some allies because you never know what twist is going to come into the game. And this whole idea of having a majority is maybe not as important as just having people. And so keeping somebody in the game who's on, and making like this gesture to them feels like it actually would have been worth it.
Right. Like, what are the chances at the final 8 that it's just going to be like a straightforward, 7-1 vote without any new magical powers or anything like that? Like, it's probably maybe like 20% chance that ends up happening.
Maybe Evie is going to be sent to the edge of extinction and be told that she can save 2 people to, not go to the next vote. Like,
you don't know.
Who knows what's going to happen?
Mm-hmm. Well,
it's kind of like Big Brother. So I have not to get into Big Brother, but I've always felt like one of the things that I like about Big Brother that I wish that Survivor could figure out a way to do is that I like on Big Brother how it's never about a simple majority because the HOH could be somebody from the minority. Like there's always this opportunity. You always have a chance on Big Brother. Whereas in Survivor, it feels like always having a chance is a little bit harder because like if you're not in the majority, you have to win like immunity or something. And so I think, the more that Survivor, I think, can make it so that having the South Pacific thing happen. Like having a simple majority is enough to win the game. The more that we can make that not true, I think the more interesting it will become. And I do think that's what's happening. And in Big Brother, it means that, more so obviously having a majority is important, but also having these relationships with everybody that you can use at any moment, no matter who's HOH, is really important.
Because no matter who gets the power, you can somehow protect yourself if you have the great social relationships where everybody feels like that you have value to them individually.
Exactly. And I do think this season of Survivor is like a little closer to that. And that's why I think that Deshawn is playing a really good game. That's why I think Ricard is like these people who are doing a better job about, keeping everybody warm are doing well.
Sophie, do you have a sense of where this is going now, where this group of 8 ends up getting back together and having to vote somebody out next time?
I feel like I need to look at the remind me who's left here. We have Deshawn, Danny, Heather.
It's basically like if you look at it, Steven said this last night with pairs. You have sort of like Shan and Liana, Danny and Deshawn, Erica and Heather, and then you have Ricard and Xander.
Yeah,
who are not a pair but are like solo free electrons.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I would be surprised if Danny, Deshawn, Shannon, and Liana survive this next vote.
Okay.
That would be my I would be surprised. I feel like the one of the 4 of them have to go.
Because on paper, if they're 4, this is 8, you'd probably feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, but you have, I think, Deshawn itching to be annoyed with Shan and make a move. And I also think Erica's smart. Like Erica's my dark horse.
I like Erica a lot. She's really, she had a very quiet pre-merge, but I feel like that, what I've seen from her the last couple of weeks has been interesting.
Like Erica would almost be my winner pick at this point.
Oh, wow.
Is that too much?
Well, I just say I think that positionally, I think she's interesting. I think that from an edit perspective, I think it's harder to imagine that. But I try not to let the edit behind. I don't like to look too much into it. I just feel like that she's had a very light edit to be the winner of the season. But Tony didn't have a ton of airtime, and then all of a sudden he exploded. Yeah.
That said, I did during the episode, she said something like he's gonna quickly drop out of nowhere. And I turned to Bobby and I was like, see, if they're letting her say that, and then he's gonna quickly drop out of nowhere, and it's gonna be proof that Erica knows all, and she's like, whatever. And then of course she was immediately wrong, and the other person immediately dropped. I think she had called Xander. Yeah, I mean, I just think other than Shan seems to really have her daggers pointed towards Erica. Although I think they might be pointed towards Heather more than Erica, or Heather first.
I think it was Erica first, and then Heather.
Oh, Erica first. Okay.
Yeah.
I just think that Erica, she has the familiarity with Danny and Deshawn probably to work with them. I'm impressed that I think she understood better that I could have predicted that she was kind of at the outs of the merge, the way that she did do the turn back time was obviously she was going to do anyway. But you could see an alternative situation where Erica and Heather are sheep being led to the slaughter by these other kind of more power players in the Blue Alliance. And it seems like either the guys in the Blue Alliance haven't done a good job with them, or they're not idiots. And it seems, I think what's most promising to me is Erica recognizes, I think, her place in the island. All the scenes of her with Xander being what the hell, I can't believe they're going over and talking in front of us. She seems like she has the right ingredients to make something fun happen. She knows where she is. She knows her place. She's willing to make a move. She's super tenacious. If you saw how long she stood up on that thing, for hours sweating, I just think she has the right, I can't imagine she's going to go out quietly is my thing. I'm excited about Erica.
Sophie, do you have a couple of winner contenders that you're watching right now?
I mean, Shan has been my absolute favorite since the get-go. I worry that while Shan has done a lot, back to my point earlier, I just think this season is going to probably come down more to who's likable and who people want to give money to, because I think they all will have an argument for having done a lot. So while Shan, I think, has been very impressive and fun to watch, I worry that like she has made a lot of enemies. And I like Shan.
Yeah, I agree that I feel like she might have peaked a little too early in the season.
Yeah. Liana, I think, is also fun to watch because I think Liana is also very young. And like Liana reminds me of, or she like, I feel like she has all of these grand ideas that she's always trying to put into play, but she forgets that like everybody else are real people who are also making moves. And so she's like imagining everybody as stationary. And she's like, I'm going to move this person here and this person here. And it's going to be like a brilliant Liana move. And the fact that Evie called her out this week, not called her out, but mentioned her as like, well, Liana's always scrambling around. Like I get the sense that Liana is incredibly transparent to the rest of the players, but thinks that she is, you know, really masterminding things. I mean, even the way she was like totally flubbed the whatever that thing was.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah. So I kind of feel like Liana's out, Shan's out. I think like Danny and Deshawn, I think both could still win the game.
Do you see Danny as a little bit of like a Rancher Rick, where, you know, sort of like he's as AJ Mass call him, like old reliable. He's a solid number, but I wonder, you know, he has like likability that seems off the charts, but in terms of like the gamesmanship, like you know, does he have anything on the resume?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he'd have to like really be up against the right people in the final tribal council who'd pissed a lot of people off. Like I think the people who are kind of in the sweet spot right now are like Ricard, Deshawn. And I mean, I'm going to throw Erica in there.
Throw her in. This is probably the first week that I think that you could, you know, actually say that we've seen enough from her this week. I mean, it was definitely like a great week for Erica in terms of winning the challenge, and then also like having like you know, being somebody that was you know, coming up with some ideas.
Who would be the most shocking to you to win at this point?
I think Heather. Yeah, well, I think that the most shocking winner to me, just to go backwards, I would say most shocking Heather. Then I might say Danny number 2.
Because you think he would be getting more if he was going to win. He's like such a.
I just like you know, who does he, unless you know, is he there with Deshawn and people for whatever reason don't like Deshawn? You know, he's also you know, wealthy from, you know, or you know, might be seen as like a person of means. So
does this mean Deshawn wins?
I would think Deshawn would. I would have Deshawn pretty high up in my list of potential winners. Yeah, like 2 or 3.
Yeah, after Erica, right?
No, I think Erica is probably like 4 or 5. I think if I was going to rank from like the bottom, like I'd say maybe Heather, Danny. I think I might say Liana might be 6.
Yeah, she's down there.
And then Erica 5, Xander, and then Shan, Deshawn, Ricard. I think if I was
going to Ricard as number 1,
I think I would have a Ricard as number 1.
My only question is, do you think people like him?
That is a very good question.
I can't tell. I mean, I get that Shan doesn't like him, but do people like him?
But you might say that she likes him the most. Like, you know, I don't know if people like despise him. Like, I think that what's better, Sophie? Like, do you want to be like polarizing where people love you and hate you, or do you want to be sort of like in the middle?
Yeah. No, I think you're probably right. And I honestly think that probably if Ricard and Shan get to the end together, I could see a world where Ricard wins. Like, I just think Shan is going to be, I think she peaked too soon. She like the pissing Deshawn off, who seems to have a lot of friends, is not going to like go well in the jury house. It's too bad because she's fun. I love her theme song. Imagine having a winner with a theme song. How great is that?
Huge. It would be huge. Sophie, I have some questions for you from the listeners of the podcast. Okay. Let's see. This is a question from Boyan, who says last season's edit was built around Tony taking you out as the best move he made, toppling you as the queen, and then being able to steamroll his way to the end following your demise. Do you think it's possible the edit could be setting up Shan for a similar fall to yours? And who is going to be Shan's Tony?
Erica.
Erica, wow. That would be out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that Shan is obviously like the crux of this season. So if Shan goes out, I agree that we have to see like how did she go out? If Shan goes out, I see that. I see that as a storyline, and I'm very flattered.
Yes. All right. Luca says, Sophie, do you think that the twist actually killed momentum a little bit? We were set up for a very interesting final 10 vote with a lot of uncertainty, and said we got 2 tribals of 5 where the priority was survive the vote no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good point. Like, we've been having all of this like tension and this buildup. And I think who went home this week was kind of not that the producers, it was their choice, but it was a totally different outcome than I think what would have happened if everybody had stayed together. And so this is like a great example of like a twist, 100% changing. Like who would have gone home, Rob, if it had just been the 10 of them?
Well, I asked Evie that question this morning, and Evie felt like, no, I really felt like that I was in a great spot here at the final 10. So it's hard to say who it was. Shan wanted to vote out Erica.
Yeah.
It might have been Erica or Heather.
Yeah. I wonder if the producers like have this, I assume it's all pre-planned or whatever.
Yeah.
But in some way, it's funny because, right, like there are times when a swap will happen and you'll get something really interesting happening at a swap because like somebody will, you know, take that opportunity to flip in their tribe or whatever. But I wonder, like, was this an example of actually doing a swap at a moment that would have had something really exciting happen, and instead we kind of like forced people to like stick to their tribal lines?
I have to think that this is you know, they come up with this especially like on like this tight schedule. Like I feel like that if anything, and they'll always say no, we have a Bible, everything is you know, planned out from the jump, but here, like with the turnaround so tight on all of this, that I mean, even like to like you had in the challenge the 2 groups of 5, you know, 5 of the things were painted blue, 5 of the things are painting yellow. So like, I don't know how far in advance they need to do that in terms of the art department. So I have to think that this is something that they knew they were going to do at 10. They've done it recently in the season 36 and season 39. So
I think in some ways it's like a little bit of a risk averse decision on the part of the producers, because I think it's a little bit of like, we don't trust our cast to make exciting TV. And so we're going to like force this thing to happen. And I think often when they put things into the game, whether they be twists or swaps or whatever, like, yes, it's going to create fun TV. Because like that's by definition what it's going to do. But I do wonder if there are times when like what we're robbed of is like what would have been really great TV anyway, without needing to have this kind of like artificial change.
Yeah. And I do think that it is helpful in terms of, you know, you have a 26-day schedule. You got to have people like, you know, get rid of them quicker. You could have 2 tribal councils in one day. And I guess that this is a fair way to do it.
Yeah.
But
Rob, what do you think of the 26-day schedule? Other than the fact that it's like absolutely absurd and it's not Survivor and like they basically are on vacation, but like, do you think it's changing the way the game is played?
So it doesn't bother me at all from a TV perspective. But as far as like from like playing the game, the thing that I've sort of been thinking about is that when you have like a big blindside in the 39-day game, that the day after is very tense and people aren't really talking. And then sort of by the time you get to 72 hours later, sort of the temperature has cooled and you can sort of like work together and like re-engage with people. And it's like, boy, I never thought, look at us. I never thought we'd be talking again. But here we are. But in the, 26-day version, like I have to think that emotions play a much bigger part in the game.
Yeah. That's a good call out. I get the sense that these people hate each other. Like it seems like a very emotional game.
Well, that might be what we're dealing with.
I was thinking about this and I was looking at like my seasons to look at the schedule or whatever, out of curiosity of like, where was I on this day that they're in now? And like one, it's crazy to me that like, you know, I'm still pre-merge in the situation that they're like now deep, you know, pretty deep into the merge. But the other thing I was looking at was like, when I got voted out by Tony, we had 2 off days before that. Like 2 full, you know, basically like maybe we had a reward challenge one day, but like 2 off days of not voting anybody out. And then the same on South Pacific, like when Ozzy self-evicted basically to go to the edge of extinction, they also had, I think, 2 to 3 off days before that. Yeah. So I feel like those off days, like those are the times when like everything is like settling and like new ideas are emerging. And I feel like this like pace of the game is very important. Where when you have that time off, it's like, people start to get unsettled and like a big new idea comes. And I get the sense that like this season, they haven't had that opportunity to like calm down and like let a new kind of theme emerge. Like they're all kind of just like playing, minute to minute.
Right. Like for Shan and Deshaun, for instance, they had sort of like this blow up at the tribal council, which was only the day before. This was like 24 hours in this episode. If they had 72 hours before they have to vote again, they have a much better chance to sort of be able to like, patch up and be able to get back on the same page, where now they weren't even together for a day. And now it's the next day. And then who knows if it's going to be, 24 hours or 48 hours before they have to vote again.
I mean, I also think potentially it could work in the other way, where because you have so little time, you're basically, your fight or flight instinct is just to like glob on to the people that you're already globbed onto. Like even where there's issue, like Shan and Ricard, it's like Shan doesn't have 2 days to figure out like who else could I go with. Like Ricard's her only option. Like there's not enough time to form these other meaningful relationships that like allow you to have like the courage to like try something new.
Sophie, John Scholl wants to know, did Sophie strategize with her allies in season 40 what they would do if there was a split at Tribal Council? And do you see any similarities to the double eviction in Big Brother and how the players there plan for it? So were you thinking at all about like, okay, final 10, they could split us up into 2 groups of 5. What are we doing?
No, I can't. Maybe I'm probably not thinking hard enough like everybody else.
To be fair, they had only done it in season 36. You had not seen season 39. So you did not know that they had done it a second time. But I do think that, survivors probably would be well served to be talking about that. Like, okay, if you're going into 12, certainly, especially after what they did this season, at 10. And I think you probably want to think about it at 8 also.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just think generally, I don't want to get too Big Brother here, but it seems like it's a little bit of like expect the unexpected now. Like you just gotta, embrace that that's the new reality. And I just hope that doesn't lead to too much of like everybody being friends with everybody. Like I think one thing's, oh my God, there's too much Big Brother talk here. But like one of the things that can be less fun about Big Brother is when there's a group of people that so have the house controlled that there's like no excitement because everybody thinks they're okay. And obviously as a player, that's like what you're hoping for. You want everybody, to feel like you're in with them. But when you're forced to do that because you have to expect the unexpected and you never know who you're going to go to tribal council with, it means that you don't get to have some of like the more fun outward rifts between Heather and Nasir or whatever it might be.
Very, very good point. But the problem with Big Brother is that it has become so like rote of like every season is so similar in terms of what they're exactly going to do that they sort of like have hacked the game where it's like, hey, well, we'll just make like this 10-person onion alliance where it doesn't even matter. Even if like somebody that's at the bottom gets the HOH, we've got enough hooks into all people. So it makes it where Survivor is just like still like the almost opposite of that there's so much variance where you can't plan for what's going to happen because it's so crazy.
Yeah. And I love feuds on Survivor. Like I love when people are like openly gunning for each other. Yeah. And I think that the one worry I would have is the more unpredictability you put in, the less likely people are going to do that because they're never going to know like, am I like usually people openly gun for each other because they feel like I'm safe. I have my people behind me. Like we're going to target this person. But if you're not sure of like who you're going to tribal with at any one moment, like you have to be a little bit more like close to the chest about who your enemies are.
Let me give you a couple more questions. Nick Fishman says, was Nasir a threat just for possessing an idol or was he actually a threat? We have not really talked too much about Nasir.
I love Nasir.
Don't you
want to see him back? Like the pure joy of watching Nasir be joyful on TV.
Yeah.
I imagine Nasir was a threat to win the game, right? I imagine the joy that we all got to observe. I mean, wasn't the whole reason they didn't vote Nasir out in the pregame was because he was like providing for the whole tribe. Like I think you are kind of aware when you're out there of like almost what the TV narrative is. And I would imagine that Nasir's narrative of like being just like a bundle of light is something that people were aware of.
Yeah. How much do you think about that? Where it's like, okay, well, if this person gets to the final 3, they're definitely winning. On top of that, if he can make the fire, he told me in the exit interview, he said that if he just looks at the flint and the machete, it makes a fire.
Nasir said that?
Yes. So are they close enough where it's like, well, hey, this guy, he has an idol, he wins a challenge or two, all of a sudden, congratulations, Nasir.
Well, I mean, this is the risk, right, with this fire making challenge is like the whole reason they had the fire making challenge is they're going to lose people at 4 who are really good. And like, I feel like the inevitable conclusion of adding the fire making challenge is you're just going to start losing that person earlier, right? They're going to have to add in I don't know, like an apple popping challenge before like the 4th, like something, because everybody is just like, then they start to account for that in their, vote outs. And like, I think that's a little bit what's going to happen this season with like all the advantages. When you start counting out like who can win fire plus advantages, you should have voted them out of the game first.
Yeah. Victor Diaz says, hey, Sophie, if the next reward challenge was won by Erica or Shan or Danny, and they got to have a one-on-one mentor session with you like Cochran was on Game Changers, what kind of advice would you give?
I mean, I would give this advice around like giving yourself a checklist. Like this is my obsessive survivor thing right now, which is like, this is the moment in the game where you never think it's going to happen to you. Like it's always going to happen to somebody else. Like somebody else is going to get screwed, but like, I know what's happening. And I think it would just be to like, give them all a dose of reality. I think the other thing I would do is I would tell them all that like, they've probably done enough right now to win the game. Like, I think there's probably a feeling pre-merge, you're like, oh, I need to find an idol. Blah, blah, blah. Like, I think there's probably a feeling now of like, how else, like, how can I be a great player? You see this a little bit with Deshaun, right? He like doesn't want to listen to Shan because like he wants to run his own game. And I feel like most of them, what I would want to do is like give them a hug and tell them like, you've done enough. Like if you get to the end, there's probably not much more you can do between now and then, because like you are who you are. People like you or they don't like you. Like that's probably what's going to come down to. And so you should probably just focus on getting to the end.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people are still so caught up in the, like, what do I have to do to make myself seem really cool? That is unnecessary at this point.
Sophie, you, I believe, tweeted about how you did not get any rice in Survivor South Pacific, and there were no reward challenges. Do I have that correct?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yes.
I do feel like that should be like a disclaimer at the bottom of the screen on season 41. The following seasons also had no rice.
Yeah. So
did you have rice in your season?
We had manioc. In Survivor All Stars, they didn't give us anything to start off the game, but then there was a way that we could earn the rice ultimately. Yeah.
My season had no rice, which I do think in retrospect was partially because they wanted Ozzy's value as a provider to be even more important.
Yes. So do you feel like that adds anything to the game?
Not having food?
Yeah.
Yes. Although I'm impressed. I mean, part of it is this game is shorter. I'm impressed by how much energy they all seem to have and how hard they're playing. Because honestly, my personal experience between season 23 and season 40 when we had rice was that, like, I think part of my gameplay on season 23 was because I had so little energy that, like, the easiest thing to do was to not do anything because I was so exhausted.
Whereas it makes a worse show. It
makes a worse show. Exactly. Whereas in season 40, I was like, all right, what are we doing? Let's go. Oops, I plugged in my computer. So yeah, that's the difference for me.
Well, Sophie, I'm so grateful that you had time to come and talk with us today. Is there anything else season 41 or Survivor in general related that you want to make sure we know?
No, I just think that we should all be grateful that Survivor's on the air. I know we all have strong opinions. I have them as well. But how wonderful is it that we all get to, like, watch this incredible, fun show?
Sophie, perfect message for us around Thanksgiving here in the United States.
Yes, exactly. Let us all be thankful.
Yes. Sophie, is there anything you want to tell people to check out? I know you're not big on social media too much these days.
God, what should they check out? That's a good question. I can't say Instagram. My husband's kicking me off Instagram because we can't have a baby being exposed. Oh wow! Hello.
It's perfect. As my baby has entered the podcast studio. Oh, snap out of it!
I need to get big on one social media platform. I don't know if it's Cameo or should I get maybe I'll get my own Patreon.
Patreon. What will you do on Patreon?
Well, not like an OnlyFans thing. More just
no, I know.
No.
That somebody from South Pacific already has that market cornered.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I gotta think about that.
The
I'm still
ultimate
thinking about starting
provider.
a rival podcast company of yours, but I haven't.
Well, you've always talked about that.
Yeah.
You and Kim are gonna, but Kim seems very very busy.
Honestly, Rob, with your young family, we haven't wanted to like kind of take over your business, but I
appreciate that. The kids are doing a good enough job trying to take me down from the inside.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Well, Sophie, thank you so much. I am always so appreciative when you come and make time for us. So thank you so much. And Sophie, all the best to you and to Bobby and to Robinson.
Thank you. I will give them all a hug for me. And also, could you imagine if Erica wins? Like,
oh my God!
I'll retire from podcasting.
I mean, you've had so many great calls in the history of the podcast. I think that you were the first one on Tony. I mean, this would just add to your resume.
I know.
All right.
All right.
Sophie,
Fingers
thank
crossed.
you so much. Bye.